Okay. Call to order the Chaska City Council Monday, September 30th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so Mayor Winchell is not here today but due to a medical thing, so we'll be working without him. So we'll do the roll call, please.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Here.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Here.
Councilmember Draw.
Here.
And Mayor Pro Tem tonight, Councilmember Wang.
Here. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda for this evening?
Yes. I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
So a motion by Hubbard, second by Hatfield. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now is the time and the agenda for the visitor presentation. And before we do the visitor presentation, I'd like to remind everyone of a few things. First, when you approach the podium, please state your name and address for the record. This is all recorded as well as, and will be available for public viewing on the City of Chaska's website. There's officially a 5-minute limit, but we'd like to try to give people an opportunity to speak a little bit about what there is, because we want to make sure we kind of err to the side of public freedom there. But we do ask to try to be respectful of that, so others can speak as well. And we also do, because there's a large number of people here, that if you do have something to say that echoes something else somebody said, just indicate that yes, you echo that, and we can move on, so we're not hearing the same thing over and over again. Fair? So, thank you. So, we have the first visitor presentation, Ms. Michael.
I have handouts for all of you.
Sure.
So my name is Gwen Michael. I'm a resident of Chanhassen. I am here for the referendum, and obviously that puts me in District 112.
And your address, please, for the record.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could write it because unfortunately this topic can give it. Okay, 7100 Gunflint Trail.
Thank you.
Please, everyone, respect my family's privacy. So I live in Chanhassen, but I am a parent of students in District 112. My students, I have one who just graduated, but one who goes to Chanhassen. My students interact with the two high schools, attend sports and their classes and so forth. So I wanted to address you today, so thank you for this time. I'm here on behalf of parents in District 112. Got a pretty good showing here today. And we're looking for transparency from the Eastern Carver County School District. We are aware that the November 5th referendum was presented to the Chaska City Council just a couple weeks ago. And we understand that you'll be considering writing a letter of support on behalf of the City Council and or the community of Chaska. So we're here today to bring to your attention questions that we have with the referendum. We understand you will not be able to address those questions, but we want you to know that we're doing our homework so that we can be educated before we vote, and we hope that you'll do the same. As elected officials, we need you to do your due diligence, understand the impact your word carries on the community, and ensure that you're representing all taxpayers in Chaska. And then first, I just want to, before I get into the information, want to thank you for this time tonight. We've attended school board meetings, we've written letters, we've attended community meetings, and finding transparency within the school board right now is questionable. While we continue to push those responsible for answers, please consider the following before offering your support in this letter. I'm providing with you copies of the documents that belong to Eastern Carver County School District 112. None of the information I'm about to cover comes from any other source than the school district. So the referendum as a whole, it's difficult to calculate what the cost is. So we've put some work into that. We've originally seen, and it's been shared with us, that the cost was $122 million as a whole. That was also a number that was printed in our local newspapers in June of this year. As of September of this year, that dollar amount was removed from those articles when the editor reviewed the information that I'm going to share with you. In our information, we arrive at the total cost of $211.7 million just to start. So I'll start with question one. It's a 10-year levy asking for $550 per student increase for our operating costs. District 112 tells us that they have not kept up with inflation for 15 years, so we have an opportunity to close that. So the amount is $5.9 million for 10 years, bringing question one to $59 million. But there's more. Only on a sample ballot could we find the statement indicating that this levy would be adjustable every year for inflation. So it became concerning because 10 years is a long time to give an open checkbook to the district to keep adjusting for inflation, and hard to hold them accountable to our expectations. In addition, our last levy that we most recently approved, we, in that levy, did an inflation adjustment for 10 years. So the statement that it's been 15 years since we've done an inflation adjustment isn't quite accurate. I'm going to come back to question two of the referendum because I'm going to jump to question three first. Technology and security levy. This ask for this levy is also a 10-year levy and asks for approximately $4.4 million per year for 10 years. That's a total of $44 million. We are simply told the current levy expires and this will not be a cost to renew it. The money is going to be used to maintain our current investment. What most do not realize is this expiring levy was approved by the voters as a $2.45 million levy for 6 years, a total of $14.7 million. So we would like to understand two things. We want to know, how does an expiring levy that's set to let us take money back home for our own families not cost us anything, and especially when the terms of the agreement are changing. So I'm going to go to question two of the referendum. This is a three-part question, or three components of it. I'm going to spend time on one of the most significant concerns. And first, let me remind everyone that this question will not pass unless you vote for question one. So you cannot have a new school, a bus garage, or maintain the buildings without the district being able to raise your property taxes every year for 10 years in the name of inflation. In addition, we're still researching the total cost of this question, as we've not identified how or when interest on this 20-year bond will be paid. Question two is a 20-year bond, and it's for $111.7 million. $62.1 million will go for maintenance, $13.7 million for a building of a new bus garage, $35.9 million for a new 605-seat capacity elementary school. So I'm going to focus on the need of the school, and this is where the documents you have in front of you are the sources of our information. A growth projection was completed by Davis Demographics. I've included an excerpt of that in early 2018 and communicated to us to have been a variety of numbers. We've heard 1,400 students in 10 years growth, 1,000 over 5 years, under 5 years. And on the district's website, it lists with all the referendum information. It tells us, we find a note that Davis wanted to go back last fall or last winter and check their numbers, and they came back and they're standing by them. We've also seen in task force notes that the district asked them to go back and revise their numbers and to report back in January. So we're seeing some inconsistencies there. We've included in your packet the following documents. So we have a projection of the elementary students by Davis Demographics and an article there. They do call out that we are expected to have about 4,800 elementary students by the year 2022. We've also given you the building information report that comes directly from the district budget report dated 2018 and 19, a report that's shared with the Minnesota Department of Education and highlights and is highlighted as award-winning. This report outlines every school building, its capacity, which is student seats it can hold, and the number of students enrolled. And I'm sorry, in your packet, I think it's the second one from the top. So it's this report's the one from the budget report for the district that goes to the state. And using these actual numbers, we found key pieces of information. Our elementary student growth over the past 5 years has only been 156 students. This is significant because we just opened a new school and 2 expansions that totaled 1,100 new seats for those elementary students. Today, the school board and superintendent tell us that in 2015, we were overcrowded and we needed to play catch up in our capacity. The report in front of you demonstrates otherwise. Also, we in 2016 also, I guess the other question is, in 2016, why did we move every single elementary student out of Chaska Elementary, out of our kindergarten center, and reboundary them to other schools if we were so tight on our capacity? And I'll also just add with that, our prior growth projection, they did recommend those buildings in the kindergarten center included be used for some of our elementary education. When these tough questions were raised to the district, they responded to us with with rumors, and they wanted to address those, and they provided us with the report that's on the front of your packet, sorry, by Wold Architects. Wold Architect, this report has their logo on it, just so you know who they are. They are an architect firm that sits on the referendum task force and advises about our need to build new schools. In reviewing this report, we've highlighted areas of concern. They include overinflating student enrollment by 172 students. They underrepresent current student seats in our schools by 370. And it overrepresents the growth projection study by 228 students, and that's from the Davis demographic study that we had. So not including the overprojection of our growth, we are not representing 542 student seats that are available in our schools today. When asked about this report at the last board meeting, Robert's rules were suspended on this topic, audience claps on this topic were hushed, and the school board video, it stopped working. So if you input the district budget information that they've reported to the state into this form, it's simple. We don't need a 605 new seat elementary school. So these are questions that we want answered before we can all feel good about supporting the referendum. For all children and for all teachers, we want to ensure that our money is being spent on our actual needs. Our teachers were just brought up to an average pay, and Carver County pays the highest median property tax in the state, with the school district receiving the highest portion of that. We hope you'll do your homework on the referendum before using your status in the community to signal to taxpayers of your approval. So we're asking for you to turn down writing a letter in support of this referendum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Stacy? Or, sorry, Ms. Michael. Sorry. Anyone have any questions? Or? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right. Does anyone else have anything that is not on the agenda already they'd like to speak about? Thank you. And you'll state your name and the address of the podium, please?
Sure. Julie Poplinski, 2470 Marshview Court in Victoria.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Slater. I live at 8225 Kelser Pond Drive in Victoria. And I just have some concerns, like Gwen stated, with not getting information from our school board that I just kind of want to keep you guys updated with what's going on in our school right now. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys. I am a little nervous. I don't usually speak in public, but I'm here to look out for my kids. So I went to the school board meeting on September 23rd and was surprised by how little I knew about the equity program that's being implemented in our school system. After hearing from many concerned parents at the meeting, Superintendent Christopher dismissed our concerns by saying equity was the right work at the right time. I've gone into our school and I've asked numerous District 112 staff what exactly equity means, because I know there's been a lot of strong feelings around it, whether good or bad. And I've been told every single time that equity is just giving each child what they need to succeed, which makes a ton of sense to me. But at the meeting, I could tell there was this huge race component involved with equity, and the school wasn't communicating that. So I asked more about that, and they said that our teachers are just trained, that we need to ask questions and get a little more information on our background. It's just talking about our differences and asking each other questions. Well, it always makes me a little nervous when I hear the exact same response from various people in an organization. So I asked to see the 35-minute equity training video used to train all District 112 staff. I was concerned to learn that the video that was narrated by our newly hired Director of Equity and Inclusion, Dr. Keith Brooks, was training teachers to segregate the children. It uses an example of a fern, a cactus, and a tulip, and how they can't grow in the same garden because they all need different things. And just as such, students should be treated the same way. It also showed Jay Smooth's Ed Talk entitled How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Discussing Race. It encourages its viewers to call out racist comments the same way you might call out something in your friend's teeth. Finally, they introduced implicit bias. According to the video, implicit bias is how we associate things like peanut butter and jelly, or per the video, black man and violence. Teachers are required to take a test through Harvard University following the video, and the test is used to identify their own implicit bias. According to Mr. O'Connell, the District 112 HR administrator, the staff will have more training modules to come. I've researched Dr. Muhammad Khalifa and Dr. Keith Brooks, the men implementing this program into our school. And as a parent, I was just really alarmed to see their history of anti-Semitism and rhetoric around white and Christian privilege. This is not the right thing to indoctrinate into young minds. My kids don't have any implicit bias formed yet. They're just little kids. And they're taught to love all people, no matter what color. Eastern Carver County is implementing subtle changes into our curriculum that we don't fully understand, and it's not yet been vetted. For those of us in here, it has nothing to do with race. None of us want racism, and it hurts me, it hurts my heart to see that there is racism in our school. But equity is about political indoctrination. It has nothing to do with defeating racism. The school board and administrators are not being transparent with the parents regarding the changes they're implementing. It's not the right work at the right time. Equity programs have been shown to fail in the districts that they've been implemented, both in racial inclusion and in student test scores. Student test scores have gone down in Edina, for example. Test scores in math and reading have gone down over 3 points in both math and reading. I've asked the board to see any information showing that this work would have a positive impact in our district, and they've failed to provide it. Why implement a broken system into our school? This is not the right work for my children. In my opinion, it's political indoctrination, and it has no place in our school. So the reason I'm concerned as a taxpayer is because our tax money has been used to implement this program, and it's not to, parents like myself don't want it anywhere near the kids. And now the district's asking for more money from us, and frankly, the community doesn't trust them. They won't provide data for the discrepancies in the referendum, as Gwen pointed out, and they won't provide data on the equity program. To the Chaska City Council, I ask that you do not endorse the referendum. Ask the school board to do better with what they have until they're able to build trust back within the community that they've been elected to serve. More money does not equal a better education. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just go ahead and echo that.
Have you
My name
introduced?
is Tiffany Williams, 2460 Marshview Court, Victoria.
Thank you.
I'd like to echo that as well. My name is William McNeely, 9940 Deerbrook Drive, Chanhassen, Minnesota.
Thank you. Anyone else? So, of course, as we know from the visitor presentation, we never take action on the item directly from the visitor presentation. So, but thank you very much for taking your time to organize your thoughts and present here tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The next item on the agenda is much more administrative. Approve the previous minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the previous meeting?
I move to approve the city council minutes from December 19th, 2019 as presented.
So motion by Graw, second by Hubbard. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Not quite as gavelly as our mayor is. Let's see, for the consent items, so the Chaska Parks and Recreation Park Naming Policy Revision. Has everyone had a chance to review the said revision?
Yep.
Can I just get clarification? I believe I remember what the conversation was, but I think it's good to just hear it again to make sure I'm remembering it correctly. What was the conversation and the specific feedback again?
So the thing coming out of the policy was talking about making sure that there's a significant enough contribution to a park before you go and name something after them. And so basically, the park board had a chance to discuss that and felt that generally 50% contribution would be something to consider than naming an element to the park after somebody.
Okay, yep, that's how I was, thank you.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
Motion to approve consent items.
Second?
So a motion by Hatfield, second by Graw. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we get to a little bit more of the meat here. Action item for adopting a resolution 2019-103.
The mouse is gone.
The mouse is dead. Oh, it's the wrong mouse. All right. Your council member, the item in front of you tonight, we're going to be talking about is each year, each local government jurisdiction needs to go through a truth and taxation process hearing. And so part of that process is to actually establish a preliminary tax levy in September. The reason we do that work in September is to provide the county with enough notification so that they can get that the proposed levy out to each of the property owners within the community to see what kind of impact our proposal would have for the next year, and in time for them to be able to make comment during our truth and taxation public hearing, which is our first meeting in December. So this is information that basically we go through to look at where do we sort of see ourselves going in 2020. We tend to wrap this into a 5-year financial forecast so that we're making sure that decisions that we're making now might seem like a great short-term decision, but may not be the right long-term decision. So we make sure we're looking at things sort of in a broader context. And then to be able to give our taxpayers an indication of what to expect for the 2020 year, but also what to expect as we're going into the future years too, so we create some consistency of messages going out there. So I know the council has seen this before, so this might be boring for you guys to see, but this is our first time to be able to get out in a public meeting and provide this. So basically, I'm going to go over a presentation to talk really about the revenue side and some of the things that we're looking at for 2020. So the 2020 budget year, so a few things that we're focusing on for this year. So one of them is annually funding our projects or a capital improvement program. So this was a project that we took on about 4 years ago where we identified a gap in dollars that we had going towards funding our existing assets in our community. We spent a 4-year period basically catching up on that and now have a capital improvement program that really gets at some of the meat of making sure that we're reinvesting back into our community. talking a little bit about our tax levy policy and what components make up that tax levy policy. And then also the big thing that we focused on for this year is we did recently complete a staffing study that I'll talk about that really was focused on looking at existing gaps that we have in staffing, but also quantifying what do we need to plan for as we go into full development, which is about 20 years from now. What are the things that we really should financially and programmatically plan for? So I think anything's important to really get back to the objectives of what we're trying to accomplish here. So, these are very similar to what we've used in the past, but I think it's really important for people to understand what are some of the premises that we use to develop our budget proposals. So the first and foremost, we're looking at how do we meet our mission? If our mission is to be the best small town in Minnesota, how do we properly allocate resources to help meet that objective? That we maintain existing high-quality service levels, that we limit our tax levy growth to only capture new growth in the community and expenditure inflation, and that we're only increasing the levy beyond that if we're really taking on a new program that we think is important, and then we look at what are the actual costs for providing that program. Fully fund the maintenance and replacements of our vehicle and equipments and physical assets so that we make sure that we're continually reinvesting into the things we've already invested into. That we fund new programs only after our existing necessary programs are funded. That we budget so that we don't draw down from our general fund reserves. That we fully fund our street reconstruction levy needs. And that we're also developing a long-term budget that's sustainable. 20 years from now, we are going to be a fully developed community, and how do we make sure we put ourselves in a position that we're able to be sustainable going into the future? So some of the things to understand from a budget environment standpoint. First thing is our existing property values continue to modestly increase in the community. So I put sort of a history from 2015 to 19 up there. We've generally seen property value increases averaging right around 6%. 2019, so this is for taxes payable 2020, we actually saw the largest increase that we've seen in property values over the last 5 years, with 9.14% increase in our market values in the community. 1.35% of that is actually coming from new growth, new development in the community. We continue to have, I'll say, practically no local government aid coming from the state. I say practically because we get still just a small amount, but very little. So it's something we can't count on. Our building permits have continued to stay strong. We've seen some shift away from commercial industrial properties, primarily because we don't have very much land for commercial and industrial available right now. That is going to change within the next 12 months as our land out on 212 by the new interchange at County Road 44 opens up. And clearly is going to be a big strategy of the cities is to increase our tax base and jobs out on that western edge of the community. We continue to see a steady increase in population occurring within the community. Our electric usage within the community continues to be up pretty significantly, and that's both due to large users like data centers coming into the community, but also we've seen quite a growth in our existing businesses within the community too. We've seen some expansions. We're seeing one that's occurring up right now. Their name's slipping my mind now. The expansion we're seeing in the industrial park. American Flexible Products. But we also have another major business that's also looking at expanding up there right now too. So we've seen good growth there. And we've historically seen a good balance between residential, commercial, and industrial development occurring through the city. We're not a bedroom community. We actually have about 13,000 jobs in the community. We have almost 10,500 households in the community. So we have more jobs than we have households. That doesn't mean everybody works in the community, but it certainly creates a much broader diversity in types of uses in the community. So the market value growth that we've seen, so the total again is in the bottom right-hand corner. We saw a 9.14% increase. The majority of that increase that we're seeing is actually in apartment values. You can see existing the total apartment increase is about 15.6% increase. Over 12% of that is coming from existing apartment buildings within the community. And that's really sort of metro-wide. There's really a shortage of rental properties within the Twin Cities, and rental prices are showing that. Rent's getting very expensive out there now because we're finding that the younger demographic of people coming into the market are just not always as interested about having a mortgage, and so they're looking for more rental type projects. So that's one of the reasons demand is really driving that apartment number. And then as far as existing residential properties, was a 7.67% increase in residential properties. And so these numbers come from the Carver County Assessor's Office, and so they do all the market value analysis this year for taxes payable the following year. So the market values are always 1 year behind where we're actually at for a tax year. This looks at the distribution of market values within the community. So you can see 72% is residential. We have 14% that's commercial industrial, 13% that's apartment, 1% that's other. That's basically the undeveloped ag property within the community. This shows the increase in market values that we've seen. I think this is an interesting chart to look at because, first of all, if you look back towards the recession in 2007, 2008, you can start to see that go backwards. That was actually the first time we saw property values actually go down over time, and it actually took us until about 2016 to recover all the lost market value within our community that we saw during the recession. We're projecting over the 5-year period an annual increase of about 2% growth, although our average over the last 5 years has been 5.46% in growth in market values. And one thing to point out, so we saw a 9.14% increase in market values for this year. It actually translates into a 9.7% increase in our tax capacity. So we talked about that. Local government aid. This is something that used to be very significant for us and actually sort of speaks directly to why we're looking at things like a staffing analysis. It's a problem that's existed for quite some time. So back in 2003, the legislature made some pretty significant changes. We used to receive over $1 million in local government aid. That slowly dipped down to basically nothing for quite some time. We did in 2014 and 15 see that go up to over $500,000. And now we're certified to receive $14,000. So it's basically, I put this in here because that was that $1 million drop in revenue that we saw was a big reason that we weren't able to keep up with staffing over the last several years. And it came just before the recession too, which made it even more difficult to look at how do we keep up with growth in the community, even though we were seeing growth in the community even during that recession time period, not necessarily in market values, but in actual new units and services. This is our expected building permit revenue that we have coming in. This again looks back over the last almost 20 years, 18 years of data. Looks at the significant decreases we saw during the recession time period, but then what kind of growth that we've seen since then. So we've been at pre-recession levels for building permits for the last about 2 to 3 years. We're actually projecting that down, at least in the projections for budgeting purposes going into the future, both to be conservative, but to also recognize that it's going to take a couple of years to get the new corporate industrial, commercial industrial land up and going. And because it typically takes about 2 years to go through a process from when land's ready and we have utilities there to when you actually see a building permit being pulled. We want to account for that, and really what you're seeing for building permits there is really looking more at our residential growth. We've still seen very robust residential growth in the community. And that's what really gets to our population increases. So this really looks not only at the past, at where we've been for households and population, but also where we project to be over the next several years. So you can see in 2019, actually it was about 11,200 homes that we had in the community, and we've been pretty consistent at about 150 new residential units being developed in the community, and that's been for some time. Back pre-recession time period, we saw up to around 500 houses being built, But historically, that's not been where we've at. We've typically been in that 150 to 200, which seems to be a pretty sustainable number for us as far as being able to build, keep up, and new residents having interest in it. The 150 number, we use an inflator factor of 2.5, so 2.5 people per household, which then allows us to extrapolate out to what we project for population. And if you look at these numbers compared to where the Met Council numbers are, they're pretty darn close. They're not exactly on, but they're definitely in that ballpark. We're right around 27,000 residents right now as we speak. And during this 5-year planning period, we're going to be up closer to about 28,500 to 29,000. Our ultimate build out is going to be about 36,000 residents, and we expect that to see that over the next 20 years. One thing that makes us unique as a municipality is that we have our own electric utility. Part of that is a franchise fee that basically is charged to ourselves. I think the thing to point out in this is we have a 10% electric fund contribution to our general fund. So this is 10% of our sales that go back to our general fund. So something we think is really unique here is that our rates are about 8 to 9% lower than Excel for our residential customers, and we take 10% and contribute it to our general fund, which keeps people's taxes lower too. So our residents are able to have much more reliable service for electric. It's cheaper than if we were on Excel, and it also has a positive contribution back to our general fund as well. So the big discussion items, biggest one is our staffing study, and this is one the council's been talking about for quite some time. It stems back to a council department head retreat we did back in 2017. Where we really spent some time looking at resources and anecdotally, talked about the staffing shortages that we had within the community. But one of the things we felt was really important is, it was important to go beyond just anecdotal information, but really get to more data-driven and look at, based on the level of services that we want to provide in our community and where we're at, what do we really, is there a shortage that we have? And if there is, what is it and where is it? And then also, how do we plan for the future? How do we make sure that we have enough resources going towards the services that we want to perform? So we had our financial advisor, Baker Tilly, formerly Springstead, come in to help us with this analysis. They went through pretty comprehensive methodology looking at similar cities, looking at our service levels and industry standards, talking with department heads, looking at key factors that influence the services that we provide, and we're able to develop data from that. The basic results they had was that we were 15.8 employees short currently, and that we needed to plan for an additional 57 employees over the final build-out. So that could be 20 to 25 years of time. The interesting thing with the growth going into the future is that's not a whole lot different than what we've seen over the last 20 years for growth. We actually saw an average of about 3.86 employees per year over the last 20 years. This would break down into about 2.86 employees over 20 years. And it's important to point out that growth really supports a lot of these. So, when we talk about adding a public works employee, we're adding it because there's more miles of roads to plow. If we talk about adding park employees, it's because there's more parks. There's more parks because there's more people, there's more businesses, there's an increase in market values in the community. So we're really capturing the new growth within our community to support those services. A specific breakdown where we saw gaps, we saw gaps in our economic development staff. We don't have a dedicated economic development staff person now. It's one of the duties of our assistant administrator. And then we have about 160 full-time employees and about 350 part-time employees. Up until a couple of years ago, we had no human resource staff. That was actually a duty of our assistant administrator. We do have a human resources director now and a generalist, and the staffing study would say we should, for that level of employees, have one more generalist position. In our administrative services, so this is our IT department, we're short one network database support person. In our community development department, we only have one planner right now. The study would say that we really should have two planners for the amount of growth that we're seeing. And very similar for engineering. We're short, we don't have assistant engineer position right now. And then our public works is where we saw the biggest gap, and primarily because we've never had a building maintenance division. We saw all of our buildings built back in the late 80s, early 90s, and for a long time, not a lot of stuff had to be done to them. That's really caught up with us over the years, and it's become very apparent through issues that we've seen with buildings and not really having the proper resources to reinvest back into it. So this analysis really looked at the majority of the positions that we see a shortage on are in building maintenance. We don't have a centralized function now. It sort of exists within different departments. So the recommendation here would actually be to bring them into one centralized service and then have it be a division of our public works department then that would add 6 employees to this division that would really be in charge of all of our facilities across the city. And then we had a shortage in each of our maintenance divisions then too, one in storm, one in streets, and then one in parks. And then our water and sewer, we're short 2 workers in that division. So basically the recommendations of a staffing study, or the recommendation that staff is making, is that this is something we can't go from 0 to 100 in 60 seconds, or you're a car person, however fast you can, whatever fast is to go in a car. What we're really recommending is that we take this in chunks and do it very similar to our CIP program, and that we really look at this over a 4-year period. And so in this analysis, basically $1.5 million is a gap in our general fund or our tax levy supported services, and about $500,000 is a shortage in our enterprise funds. So our recommendation would be to look at this as a 4-year program, increase our levy by $375,000 a year for 4 years to make up that gap, and be able to get us up to full service. So we did some analysis on this to get some feedback from our residents on where they stand for value of services in the community, because this really gets back to a value question: is do our residents perceive value in the services that we're providing and the costs that they're paying? So good news, looking at the value of city services in our latest survey, which was about a year ago, we had 87% of our residents perceived high or positive value in services. That's actually the highest level we've had in any of our surveys going back to 1993. City services all ranked very positively. The ones that tend to rank the highest, because they're the highest priority to people, are our public safety ones, which include obviously police, fire, water and sewer becomes an important one because of the importance of safety there, and road maintenance. We have less people, obviously, that utilize things like our golf course. Not everybody uses our community center. Not everybody uses our curling center. But all of them had very positive rankings of the people who utilize them. The city priorities sort of fall in line with what you would think is our public safety and public works. Water and sewer all tend to be very high priority, and obviously as we get into our recreational funds, they tend to be a little lower priority. But then we started getting into asking residents questions about what would they support increasing funding to support city services. And we were basically looking at if we're going to keep services at a constant level, so not increasing services, but keeping it at a constant level, what are the departments that they would support that in? And to me, the most important one is, if we look at our current services, and if we wanted to maintain that service level that we have in a high level, how many people would support having some kind of a property tax increase to be able to maintain those current service levels? And you can see 68% of our residents reported back that they would actually support an increase if it meant keeping their services constant to what they're receiving now. So our operational tax levy policy is really built on 3 things. The first 2 things are things I think we need to look at every year. First thing is new growth in the community. So we saw a 1.35% increase in growth in the community and market value. If we don't capture new growth coming into the community, it means that we're not capturing those new additional resources, and really those new residents aren't paying their fair share towards the services that we provide, because we're increasing the amount of services we provide every new resident that we add. And so our policy would have us capturing new market growth or new value growth in the community. It'd look at our expenditures and really say that we have to be able to plan for an inflationary increase in expenditures if we were going to keep our service levels constant, and that we would only increase beyond that if we actually had a new service that we're looking at. This year, that new service that we are looking at is really trying to fill that gap with the staffing. And as we talked about before, we're recommending that we take that over a 4-year period, which would be an additional $375,000 a year for 4 years. So what this, I'm going to skip over this part and get to basically what this means for the median value home in the community. And the reason we use a median value home is, you know, this is an example home. We want to give people a sense of what to expect. You know, median value homes means that half the homes were below this value, half of them were above that value. But this really gives an example to somebody. So the median value house in Chaska in 2019 was $260,200. If you use the 7.67% increase that we saw in existing values in the community from the county assessor's office, that same home would be valued from a tax perspective at $288,900 in 2020. If we assumed our tax levy policy and adding the staffing study, basically that 2019 home would be have city taxes of $759 for the year. That same home in 2020 would have taxes of $829, which is a $70 annual increase for the year. One of the things that is unique because of the growth that we saw in our community, so we saw a 9.7% increase in our tax capacity. Our tax increase, percentage increase, would actually be less than that. So our tax rate would actually go down. So what that means is that our tax rate would go down by 1.59%. So what that means is that if a property value stayed the same from 2019 to 2020, their taxes would actually go down by 1.59% under this proposal. Now, I don't use that for the example because most homes don't stay the same and they don't go down. They usually see increase in market value in the community because we are a growing community, and that's why we use the example home to give people just a sense of what's being talked about here. But the other thing I think is really important is to put this in the perspective of where we fall for taxes in the metro area. So the Department of Revenue puts out data each year from cities about what their total tax levy is, and then we look at what their population is. So there's 87 municipalities in the Twin Cities that we look at. The thing about this data is Department of Revenue is actually upgrading their computer system. The last data that they actually have is 2018. So we put in our data comparing what we're proposing for 2020 compared to what tax levies were in 2018 for the other communities, and you can see that we're 7th lowest in the entire Twin Cities. So our tax levy per capita for every person in the community is $377, which you have to assume that the city's tax levies probably did not stay the same over that 2-year period. So, you know, we're probably in that 81st or 82nd range, but it's basically where we've been for a very long time. We've always had very low taxes in Chaska, city taxes. You know, I don't want to pick on Chanhassen. I know a lot of people are here in Chanhassen, but we're in Chaska, so we have to at least talk about it. So Chanhassen, you can see, you know, the nice thing about Chanhassen is it's a pretty good comparison because we basically have a very similar industrial base, and we also have a very similar number of homes within the community. You can see that their tax levy per capita is $427. So we've always been significantly less than our neighbors for what we pay in city taxes. And, one of the things that we have that's different is the one general fund service that we fund that no other city in the county has is the police department. So this number includes our police department, that we're able to provide those services for a much lesser cost than most cities in the Twin Cities. So our schedule again, tonight would be the preliminary levy. So basically we're looking at setting the maximum. So basically we can't set it, we can't go higher than this in the future. We can go lower, and we'll continue to come back to you with information as we go through the fall. A lot of what we're going to focus on over the next month or two, though, is going to be our enterprise funds. We spend a lot of time talking about our general fund, but the reality is in Chaska is that we have an $80 million budget, and of the $80 million budget, $15 million is our general fund. Everything else is everything else we do. Of our $80 million, $10 million is tax levy. So tax levy for Chaska is a very small component of what our total budget is. Now, obviously, we spend a lot of time on it because it's something that people don't have the choice. They have to pay it, because it's taxes. But the reason we spend a lot of time talking about our enterprise funds is because for a city our size, or really for any city in the Twin Cities, we have a lot more enterprise funds than a lot of cities do. And our objective with our enterprise funds is that the service that we're providing, that the operations are covered by the revenue that we generate from those, and that they're not property tax supported. So our general funds really are only property tax supported entities. So I think it's an important distinction to point out for Chaska. It makes us very unique in that perspective. But this gives you a sense of what the schedule is. Any questions?
Anyone? Thank you very much, Matt.
All right.
All right.
I was just going to comment, I think it's important to, Matt does a great job going through that. I think it's also important for viewers, people in the audience and everything too, that understand that through work sessions, which are open meetings prior to council, we've seen a lot of this information. So I always just like to say that because it's, it's a lot of little head nods up here, and it doesn't mean we're not listening or interested, but it's, we're seeing it again for sometimes the third or fourth time, which is good because, like I said, we should see it that often. But like I said, I always want to make sure because we devote a lot of time to the work sessions that are open as well for people to see the information. But this is kind of that formal, expected city council meeting presentation. So just wanted to make sure that gets said.
It goes on the record.
Yep.
That we've been paying attention.
We have been paying
Have been
attention.
paying attention, yes. So this is not a public hearing, but I always typically give the audience a chance to speak if anyone has anything they'd like to, ask questions or have a comment. Seeing as there's none, bring it back here. So, sure, you have to approach the
You gotta
podium,
go to the podium.
so you can get your voice on.
I just was interested in when you talked about the growth projection and the calculations you used to project the population. And as we're talking about the schools and those growths, is there any kind of comparison between what the communities use and the schools use to see if we can have like
Our
accurate-
projections are actually pretty close to what we see. I was actually just looking at that today. Based on our assumptions for the number of households that we have in the community, we've seen, of the 2.5 people, we assume that the half a person is the potential student coming in. So we generate between probably 75 and 100 new kids in the community each year, which I think, I don't know for certain, but I think a lot of the communities in the school district are seeing very similar building permit levels to what we are. So, within the district communities, we're probably seeing about 300 new kids a year, which, over that 5-year period is about 1,500 new kids within the community. And so our numbers haven't been that drastically different when we've looked at them. And, what I do on an annual basis is I project out 5 years, but then I go back and I look at, well, how did my projection compare last year compared to what I'm seeing this year? And we just haven't been that far off, so.
And that's assuming that those are residents and residents' children, but it's hard to determine, right, which, if they're gonna go to private school,
Yep.
open and roll out. Or
It is, that's, I mean, there, you know, and that's where their demographic studies are gonna get a lot more into detail than we
Right.
do. You know, when we look at a population, we're looking at from our service perspectives by household. Our demographic needs are significantly more simple than school districts.
Sure. Thank you.
That's a good question, thank you.
So bring it back up here. Any discussion?
That was
around
actually
the-
my question. I was actually kind
Oh,
of
okay.
curious on that as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, Cover County is, you know, a fast-growing county in the state of Minnesota. So it's good to see those numbers and everything like that. And, you know, my comment on the staffing thing is being new to the council and kind of seeing that, the work that was laid, and kind of see that we're 16, we'll say 16, but 15.8. We're not gonna hire a 0.8, right? Well, we might, be part-time. It's shocking to some degree when I first saw it, just because it is kind of like, jeepers, things run very smoothly here. And then you spend time getting to know the individuals that make those things run smoothly, and you realize they're just doing a lot. And how sustainable is that? And you know, and we talk about buildings and maintenance and everything like that. So I was concerned but surprised, but glad we had kind of a plan to address kind of that gap, because it's not a sustainable plan to continue to run roughly 16 people below what you should for the service level you should provide. And clearly people on the surveys believe that you're getting good service, so good value.
I'll echo your comments, you know, just being up here and learning the different facets of the city. Chaska is a unique community in the sense of all the services that we provide, and like you said, the entities that come along with it, the community center, curling rink, things like that, and that takes people, you know, and people cost money. So, you know, but, you know, while it seems great that, yeah, you can run it on bare bones, like you said, it's not a sustainable way of running things. So, and something will give, and that would hurt and impact the city as a whole, so,
Well, I think the thing that really is giving now is our buildings.
yes.
That's,
Yeah.
you know, it's, you know, this building, I've never seen a building that leaks more than this building. And, you know, the community center has had very similar problems. And, you know, a big deal of it is its age. I mean, this building was opened in 1987, so it's over 30 years old. And for the most part, it hasn't had any real significant changes in 30 years, or any real significant maintenance upgrades to it.
Anyone else? And, you know, my 2 cents are that, you know, like every time I walk into the community center during the winter time or like the summer when there's like rain, it's like there's buckets like around there. And, you know, that's just kind of makes, as a resident, you know, it kind of like makes you feel a little embarrassed about that. Or you're walking, like everyone who's walked in the doors of City Hall saw the rust in the doors and all that, just because there's no one left to like maintain those, because there's other things that are higher priority. So it's not exactly a great reflection on our city to, you know, for visitors who are coming from another city, that we've got rusty doors that are in disrepair, so.
And
you know.
just speaking in growth aspect too, you know, people that are looking to maybe make Chaska their home, we want to make sure it looks its best.
Yep.
So, and runs its best.
Absolutely. So it's not just leaky doors, it's like, you know, roads and making sure roads and trails and, you know, the sanitary sewer and stuff is all maintained. So it's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, and our street program, every street in downtown, we started in 2010, will be reconstructed within the next 2 years. And when we get done with that program, then we start basically, you know, Chaska is sort of developed in 3 different stages. You know, we have our historic sort of area down here, but then we have the stuff that was sort of pre-Jonathan, and then the Jonathan plus up on the north end. And in some respects, that makes it nice for us to be able to plan, because we can sort of chunk it out in those areas. So you'll see, once we get done with the downtown, we'll be coming back and talking about what's the next section of town that we really need to focus on.
Cool. Anything else? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I don't want to speak at once.
Okay.
Don't just all jump at it, guys.
This is,
So
this is for the resolution.
Okay, I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-103, establishing the maximum preliminary city tax levy for
Second.
payable 2020. Sorry, I don't know if I have to read the whole thing off, but it's out there now.
That's good.
And I'm seconding.
So motion by Hubbard, second by Hatfield. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. On to the next item of business, which is the resolution in support of school district referendum 2019-104.
Mayor and Councilman, the item in front of you tonight is coming back at request of the council from our last council meeting. If you remember, we did have representatives from Eastern Carver County School Districts come and present to us basically information on the referendum that is being considered in November. At that meeting, they went through each of the questions that will be asked and they answered any questions they did have. I did want to provide pass this out. The superintendent did get over to me, because I know some questions came up about statistics for population and capacity within schools. He did ask that I pass it out to you guys so you guys have that. But basically, the item that you have in front of you tonight is a resolution of support that we brought back at your request to consider. You know, a couple of things to point out from the city's perspective. A couple of these things we've been planning for quite some time. If you look at the Southwest Chaska area, we started planning for that back in 2002. It was called the Heights of Chaska Plan at the time, sort of post-recession. When we revisited it again and came up with a master plan, it sort of got redubbed Southwest Chaska. But as part of that planning process, there was always the intention of putting an elementary school up in that development area, and primarily for reasons very similar to what we saw in the Clover Ridge neighborhood, is that we're really developing a small city up there, a neighborhood that really can support a school. And with the addition of the interchange that will open up within the next couple of months up at County Road 44 and 212, that's really going to expedite the development of that area up there. We're already seeing it with developers coming in with increased demand for getting more plats approved up in that area to really finish off the residential area. We, when we're all said and done, we'll have about 2,500 new homes up in that area that will all be in close proximity to the site that we're talking about for elementary school. So that's something that's been talked about for quite some time. The second thing is the bus barn garage site. This is actually one, you know, I've been with the city since 2001, and I think the entire time I've been here, we've been talking about this bus barn garage site for a number of different reasons. From the city's perspective, it's really been around the fact that that site is just not at the capacity that can really hold what they need to do for the district. It's too small. It's out of compliance right now for outdoor storage and things like that, and has been one that we've been looking to help the school district find a new location for that school bus garage for quite some time. It is not in a good location for that. It's very difficult for the buses to get in and out of the site, and the site just does not have the capacity to be able to handle the current needs that they have or the future needs as we go into the future. I think one thing that's been sort of unique about the discussion of that site is both the city and the school district have also been working with Carver County to look at how we could potentially reuse that site for a use that would again provide a public service. Carver County has the interest in wanting to purchase that site to be able to basically put a service center there. They have run out of space at the courthouse for their social service division, and as you know, we're currently working with them on the license center here because of the expansion of our library, that they would move that over to that location, and that would be basically a service center for residents of Carver County And an important thing for the city of Chaska is keeping county seat services within downtown because it's a big daytime population for us. Our downtown master plan has been sort of the heart of what we've been focusing on for the last several years. And having employment in downtown is a big deal to supporting that plan. And so that's been something that we've been talking about for quite some time. But it all stems from the premise of the site is not big enough. It can't accommodate what's there now. And it's just not a site that works going into the future and is out of compliance with our codes right now. So I think it's important just to sort of point out those city aspects to it that obviously the school district has to focus on what the school district does, but from a city perspective, we have things at stake in this too. This, the things that are being discussed in this referendum are things that have been discussed for a long time and have been sort of the premise for a lot of planning that's gone on in this community for quite some time.
Thank you. Just as for transparency, so my wife is an employee of the school district, so I'll facilitate the discussion, and I won't be participating in the vote tonight, but I will certainly encourage others to speak here too. So, do you have any questions for Matt?
I don't. Any questions? I think it's, the things that I jump out on here when I look at this resolution, as a council member, I do believe that, quality education impacts the city, and there's a value to that. I think you capsulated the issue with the bus garage very well. For someone myself, who drives by that on a daily basis and sees, 3/4 of their buses sitting outside, plus individuals who live in that ward who stare at those buses every day, everything like that. The other one, I think, for me, that just really resonates well, in this resolution is the importance of security in our school buildings. We live in a world currently that school safety continues to be important, and having a first grader now and soon to be kindergartner, it really just hits home because we're all connected. It doesn't matter if we have a kid in the school. It's every city that has something that happens in a school district is impacted, regardless if you're directly impacted or not. It impacts us all. So those are the things that just jump out to me in the resolution that I think make a lot of sense to me in the city role, right, as a council member type piece.
Yes. I spent kind of the weekend going over a lot of data, just numbers and things like that, looking at what our projected population is with our comprehensive plan, what the counties, what their comprehensive plan says. Looking at, I wish I would have gotten this earlier, then I could really comb over it. But some of your data was in the school district data, as far as the numbers go. And, like you said, we're not the school board. That's a kind of a different entity here. We're talking about Chaska, and I agree about the busing, the land not being conducive for that. Also with the technology, the question 3. Just to kind of shine light. Sorry, I'm like scattered over here. I wrote some numbers down in regards to just, talking about just on the county level, 2020 population for Chaska, Chan, Carver, Victoria, which kind of make up the school district. Places like Carver, while they in 2020 have a population of 6,300, they're projected to have a population of 15,500. Right now, I don't know where our school boundaries lie. I don't know who gets bused where as far as in the elementary level, because my son is not there yet. My son is also in preschool, soon to be headed towards kindergarten. So I have to keep that in mind too, that I have someone that's going into the school district. So it is growing, and I would assume that if they're projecting Carver to grow that much, obviously, if Chaska kids are currently, like, I believe, I know some people whose kids are at the Carver Elementary, and obviously they're gonna have to go elsewhere, so.
You're looking at two right here.
It's, yeah, just from a logical standpoint, we're growing. All of our cities are growing, the county is growing. I did ask for clarification that in the 2015 referendum, I asked the schools, we have already purchased the land. That is my understanding.
Yeah.
This referendum talks about building on the land. So I can understand your concern of why now, why so soon, and everything like that, but the land has been purchased. I think it would be one thing if the land wasn't purchased, but this is talking about the referendum itself, you know, and so just from a numbers standpoint, we're growing, and it makes sense, and it sounds like Carver was built to catch up from the overcapacity. So now we need to, it's just like the staffing study, now we need to like look ahead and plan ahead. I'm all about planning.
Well, and I think it's important to point out with two of the facilities that the school district had. So first of all, the Old Cheska Elementary School. So a lot of old people who went to Old Cheska Elementary School ended up going to Carver or Clover Ridge. Actually, maybe most of them to Clover Ridge. I think it's important to realize that even though that school was repurposed, these are still kids that are in the district, and if they weren't going to La Academia, they'd be going to some other school within the district. So that is
Right.
That is an elementary school, and it may have been repurposed to La Academia, but there's still that many elementary kids within that school. I think the second thing to point out is the early childhood education for, I'd say probably about a 4-year period was actually housed in the very far west end wing of the high school.
Yep.
And that was because there was no space for that. And yeah, I can tell you from one of my children taking them up there, it was odd to take your preschooler to a high school. But that's when that space for the kindergarten center actually got repurposed into early childhood center because 2 of the elementary schools didn't have kindergarten at their facilities. So Clover Ridge was one of them, and so there was an addition put onto those 2 schools back both Victoria and Clover Ridge Elementary maybe about 4 years ago. That basically allowed the kindergarten programs to move directly into those schools so that they could have kindergarten in each of the elementary schools, and then that allowed them the space to be able to move their early childhood education center back basically into that facility, and that also has some adult education as well.
Yeah. With the kindergarten, no, the early childhood center, that, you know, someone had stated repurposing it into an elementary school. I don't know if they've been in that building, but I don't think that that would be something that would be realistic, just with the kind of the layout and functionality of
In the
that
space
building.
too, I mean, the early childhood, so, you know, the statistics that will show that if somebody starts in early childhood within the district, they're probably gonna stay in that district going into the future. And so early childhood is a really important component of what a school district provides, not only for the services that they provide, but also because it ends up being that tie that they have to the community going into that first elementary school that they go into. If the kindergarten center was used for an elementary school, then they'd need to find space for the early childhood center.
As a resident who doesn't have children, doesn't plan to have them anytime soon, I think a bit of a unique perspective and how does this impact me? I think it's really important. It's really easy just to look at numbers, but just the vision for Chaska and what we want Chaska to look like in the future. I just find this to be an important part of our growth and making sure that Chaska stays a good place for everyone. One thing that gets mentioned is the programs for special education, and I think that's going to continue to be just an important piece of going forward, and that while we may account for a certain number of students for those, you know, rooms, that it's often a lot lower. And I think that that's been a bit of a forgotten group at times. That's a very near and dear group to my heart. And that's an important thing to look at too. If we just keep jamming students in because there's a certain number on a piece of paper, and that we continue to not really look at what's important in all of this, I think we lose a bit of what Chaska's about. And so as not having a child, that's really important to me, that I personally support this because I care about where Chaska goes, and I want to keep living in a place that really is there for everyone.
So this is not a public hearing, but we typically open it up to the audience members for comments. So if anyone likes to speak, feel free to approach the podium, state your name and address.
I guess my question to you is.
Your name and address again. Sorry.
Gwen Michaels, 7100 Gunflint Trail in Chanhassen. My question to you is, when we were talking about like the growth projections and looking at past data, isn't it a little bit concerning that our elementary students aren't choosing Eastern Carver County as a school to go to, if in the past 5 years, we've only grown by 156 students?
I mean, the data that we have is the stuff that we provided to you in this report here that the school district had supplied. I mean, basically, they look at those projections going out based on where they are now and where they're looking at in the future. This is their demographic data. Again, we don't get into the same demographic studies that they do to look at this, so I don't think we have any information that would dispute that.
Yeah, to me, what singled out was the question that you had asked prior was, you got two entities doing two similar things of growth planning. Different motives, sure, right? Different constituents, different groups to address, and some more detail than other. And in that two example, the data the lines up. And that was, like I said, I commend you for asking that question, because I was trying to do the math and try to figure out what that is too. And so to me that, like I said, speaks to the volume of it, because if you question one set of data, another set of data that is being used for different purposes, kind of backs it up, and actually would be 1,500 versus 1,400. So okay, 100 of those students are going to choose to go somewhere else, roughly. So that to me was kind of something important to hear. Like I said, I appreciate you asking the question, because you're right. I know sources of data, where it comes from, all that's important. But you got, for me personally, you got two separate groups using the data for different purposes, but the data aligns to be very similar.
And if I can ask one more question, the information you got from Clint Christopher that he's sharing with you tonight, is that public information?
You can have a copy.
Anyone else?
I have a question for you. This that you put together, where is this a spreadsheet that you had made up, or is
No.
this on their website?
Nope, that is all provided by Eastern Carver County School District.
Okay.
So that was to,
So like I can go online
Yep.
and this like is exactly like this or whatever?
yep, the
Okay.
WOLD report projecting our school needs is on the referendum site.
Okay.
And it's called Capacity versus Projected Growth.
Okay, cool, thank you.
One of the things I did talk to Clint today about this, and, because I wanted to make sure that I was educated on it too. One of the things that they look at it from a capacity perspective is, there's really sort of two things they look at. They look at program capacity and they look at building capacity. And building capacity is very different than program capacity, because in buildings, like our community center, we could fit a lot of people in our community center, but our program capacity is a lot smaller than what our building capacity is. Because if we're going to adequately provide the programming that we provide, we can only have so many people in the community room at one time. We can only have so many people in our wet craft room or dry craft room. And I think he does a pretty good job in the memo sort of explaining that there's really a difference between building capacity and program capacity, and that it really gets down to what are we trying to have for class sizes, and also the fact that, I think like Councilmember Hatfield had mentioned, that there's a difference in the different types of services that are provided, that there's a difference for a staffing to kid ratio for a special ed program versus a standard class. So that's sort of what's explained in that memo as I read it.
I don't know if I'm out of order, so just let me know if I am, but, and I haven't read the memo, but one thing with this referendum that we're being told is a new elementary school being built in Chaska would be for 605 students, and it could be expandable. On the other hand, we're being told, buy and pay for a new school because expanding a school is too expensive. When we just recently built Carver Elementary, we spent $33 million, but we spent $3.9 million to add 150 students to Victoria and to Clover Ridge independently. So there is a building capacity, there is a program capacity, and we do have elementary schools that we could invest in expanding to keep the growth at the right pace, so we don't overbuild, because what we're not seeing is, what's the plan if we overbuild and add another school? Because on that sheet, if you'll look and you'll see we have the capacity to add more students. So if we overbuild, what do we do?
One thing I will point out, though, is that keep in mind that Carver is going to be 40,000 residents someday, and
Yeah,
Victoria is going to be
It's
40,000 residents someday. So
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
our western growth isn't even close to where it's going to be.
And I'll
You're-
speak from sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
As I was bused as a small child from downtown Chaska to East Union. So we may be able to expand certain schools, but it's not where the growth is happening. And to put a small child on a bus for that long, I don't personally remember it especially, but I've, been told about it. It was hard on my mother, a single mother, to know that her child, for a half day sometimes, or a full day, to put a child on a bus for that long.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important to recognize here, is that whether we have schools or not that could be added on to, that's not necessarily where the growth is. And as Matt mentioned with the Carvers, I just don't think I respect your opinion here, but
No, that's
I
fine.
just don't think we're at risk of overbuilding, knowing that we do just have some crazy growth that's going to happen.
Sure.
I,
And to that point.
I will say, I echo her, and
Yep.
I'm one of the people that was furious that we have a Chanhassen School and a Chanhassen High School. I went to Chanhassen High School. I lived in Chanhassen. I honestly think they should have built that building to add on. So I understand where you're coming from, but I completely agree. I would not want my child to go very far away to go to elementary school. And we talk about projected growth. We're not just talking about Chaska, we're talking about Carver growing too. So Carver students in our district have to go somewhere. Chaska students are currently going to the Carver Elementary, but we're building up that part of Chaska as well. They've got to go somewhere too. So, simultaneously, we have to account for that. And they're elementary school age kids. I mean, that's kind of the demographic we're talking about with this particular building in this referendum. So I just want, you to know that.
Nope, and I understand that, and I totally respect the busing of the children and how far they go. That's why it's a surprise we have so many from Chaska going to other schools. But from a school district and the demographics there, the biggest growth is in other cities besides Chaska, so. it's
Right,
really
which
those
is why
kids.
we have a Carver Elementary with Chaska students,
Sure.
but Carver's gonna grow, so Carver has to put their elementary students somewhere.
Yes, they do. And
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
like,
don't-
I
yeah,
get
we
it.
don't have to debate. I
I
know,
think
just
it's
we've
good
moved
to look
those
through
kids,
a
yeah.
lens of scrutiny. I really
Absolutely.
do, but it's just one of those things with this particular, these questions here, like you talked about with some of the planned growth with Chaska and stuff like that. It's just kind of addressing the numbers and things like that, so.
Sure, yeah, it just, we have to consider we built a school in Carver, but we moved all your Chaska students out.
You didn't move, no. I'm
We-
just
we
saying, depending on
reboundaried.
where you were at in Chaska, your kid may go to Carver Elementary, but Carver is a growing community, and so as they grow with their single-family home growth and their elementary school age kids, they gotta put their children into a school.
Sure.
Obviously, it makes sense to put them in the Carver Elementary. They're gonna draw district boundaries year by year.
You're gonna
I'm
see
not
a
on the
new
school board, I
boundary.
don't know what the boundaries are, but.
You're hitting it right on the head. They're gonna this area out here, and you're gonna see the kids who currently from Chaska are getting bused all the way to Carver are probably now gonna be going to the new elementary school in Chaska, because that's the dynamic of growth.
Yeah.
Is that you fill it up as you need it, and then as their community grows, they're gonna be able to backfill that, and we're gonna be able to fill it from the neighborhoods that we have. So I think what you're saying is exactly, I think, what's gonna happen.
I mean, that's the way I approached this over the weekend when I did my research. It's just, she was saying, you know, I agree with Michaela with, it's more than just numbers, definitely is more than just numbers, but I was looking at it purely from a statistical
Sure.
reasoning standpoint.
And the boundary piece gets to be a little complicated because we built the school and then we reset boundaries and we filled buildings, but that's not what the taxpayers paid for. Because the levy was stated that we were building a new school because we were going to grow at a rate of 100 students per year for 4 years, and they didn't come. So we built a school, they didn't come, we did reboundaries to fill those schools, and that's what we're concerned is going to happen again.
But
So-
they had stated in their own referendum information that they had handed out that they were playing catch-up with overcapacity of other
Yeah, I was
schools.
gonna say,
assuming that's why
I don't
they
know that
probably
that's
put other
necessarily the
boundaries in.
case, that the
Yeah.
growth hasn't come. I mean, if you look at the Carver statistics, I mean, their school is almost at capacity now, and they've been almost at capacity from the day they opened. I can tell you, both of us sat in the PTA event that they had last Thursday. I can't imagine they'd put another person in that school. I mean, it's incredibly crowded.
Yeah, I mean, even look at the numbers for Carver Elementary in there, it's close.
And that's why we provided you with the document. I understand there's the perceptions and so forth, but we've got the information to consider and so forth. So thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you for, you know, bringing forth your analysis. So,
I would just add, because I've been thinking a little bit about it too, is it's what's least popular, referendums or district rebound, you know, realign, right? And it comes into play, right? Because I think of that too. It's like, I'm in a new neighborhood. I stare at, my house didn't exist 3 years ago. You know, I stare kitty corner where the new school would be. And, you know, the thought of setting my kid when there's a school a mile, 2 miles down the road somewhere else seems very strange and odd. Numbers to me are great. I like numbers. I was going to be a math teacher one time. But I also got to look at what I see in my heart and everything too. And I shared this, you know, with the superintendent last time too. Is you know, my son was a kindergartner. They have families at Carver. They have the River Creek. Missing one of the families. And the goal was to kind of keep that pod of K through 1, K through 3, kind of in that family atmosphere piece, and kind of keep that, because, you know, my son actually just went to a birthday party of a second grader, right? Well, how did he get to know her? Well, they were in that family. You know, right away this year, not in that same family anymore. Why? Because they don't have rooms for that in that space, right? So right away that says, okay, and you go there and you see things like the lost and found table, right? Just things that speak of it is at capacity. And you see, you know, a gym full of bingo players and excitement in those families and kids. So, and like I said, then I stare at houses and trucks and things being built. And to me, there's no question that you're going to fill that school, and that school's at capacity. And to redistrict and move boundaries, and, you know, because we have open 200 spots at a school over there, doesn't seem beneficial to the student.
if you state your name and address, please.
Julie Poplinski, 2470 Marshview Court. I can totally appreciate everything you're saying right now, and you're talking about massive growth that is going to happen in the years to come. But what I don't understand is why we are in such a rush to approve this referendum. And I can appreciate that Clint gave you some data, and you should be really happy and proud of that, because we've been asking for data multiple times. And as a citizen, to not even have the respect to get an answer back one time? How many of us have sent emails? No answer back, no data, no explanation. We don't trust these people. We don't trust that they're going to spend the money, the millions and millions of dollars that they want. We don't trust they're going to spend it the right way. We're just asking people to hold on, get us our answers, reorganize, and represent this referendum in the spring or next fall, whenever you want to do it. We always have voted yes. We want to vote yes. We want to feel good about it. We don't feel good about it. Thank you.
You want to approach and state your name and address, please?
Elizabeth Provenzino, I'm at 1947 Creekview Court. I'm a resident of Chanhassen. Full transparency, I did make the choice to put my son, my daughter's a graduate of Chanhassen, I put my son in private school with some of the upcoming changes that are coming in our county and our district that I'm very against. The one thing I just wanted to point out is, A, it doesn't seem to be in the budget that all these new homes and all these new people that you're speaking about, specifically in Carver, is the tax that they will pay being calculated into that? Or are we funding it up front where they benefit from it? That's the one thing, it's not clear to me. And the other thing, the other point I wanted to make is in voting yes to this referendum, while you may agree in a bus garage or in a school, you're agreeing to everything. You don't get to pick and choose. There's a lot of things bundled in there, and when you vote yes to it all.
Thank you.
Jennifer Palmquist, 9961 Deerbrook Drive. I was wondering if any of you have looked at the other equity plans in the other districts, and have you considered the potential for a 30% reduction in enrollment once that is instituted? Because it is happening elsewhere. So now we're going to have these schools, we're going to have all this money out, we're going to have all this, we're going to have a bus garage, but we're going to have 30% less enrollment. Has anybody looked into that?
I think unfortunately, it's really hard when we're making decisions like these to just rely on assumptions without you.
That's
So at
already
one moment,
happened.
you're asking us to look at, here's hard numbers, but on another side, you're saying, can you just assume that this is actually going to happen? So we can't always just, well, I completely respect that, and I think it's an important thing to consider, I do. It's really hard for us to just be like, okay, well, we're going to just assume that this is going to be the same here as it is there in that. But I mean, absolutely, I think that's an important thing to think about. I just find it really hard to live on assumptions sometimes.
Okay, and I understand that, but it's already happened in Edina, so it's not an assumption. If you look at the other schools with the equity plans, they are failing. So there is data and there are statistics on that. The other piece of information along with this is, if we're not going to go on assumptions, then I don't think we can just assume that Carver will be at 40,000 population someday. We really need more data. We need more information. We need more time to know that that's truly going to happen. We don't know. There could be a recession in 3 years and Carver doesn't grow at all. So that really is operating on an assumption too. I just want to make sure that we're all using the right statistics and we're all making, we're all not making assumptions across the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jared Slater. I live at 8225 Kelzer Pond Drive, Victoria. I just want to commend all of you because I really appreciate, we've all been to other meetings, and I've been frustrated in the past that people, I don't feel have done their research, have looked into things, and like hearing you talk and you talk and you talk, all of you, you've all done research on this. And I just really respect that. I appreciate that you've looked at the numbers. I think just the concern that we have as parents, I went to school for 17 years after high school. I'm a scientist, I'm a surgeon. And for me, education has always been the key thing for our family. We've always voted yes on everything that has to do with education. You have a young son, you said. It's vital to their future. This is the first time ever my family has said, we're going to hold off on this because we just want more answers. There isn't a rush to this. And I just think, keep looking at the numbers before you maybe decide to support this. We can always come back next year and vote for the referendums, and all of us would say yes if we had the answers, and it would pass resoundingly within our community. But right now, with the changes that they're looking at making, many of us are looking at pulling our kids out of the school system for fear of the changes that are coming, like you guys have said. And I just think some things need to be addressed. Some transparency needs to happen for us. We're just all concerned about that, just the well-being of our students. So I just don't like the rush of this. We got these emails end of summer, and we have had no time to process it. No one has had answers to the questions, and that's just been our concern. We want what's best for our kids. We want answers to how our money is being spent. And if we have the answers and we know how it's being spent, we will all stand behind you and say, yes, 100% we support each and every one of you to pass this, and we will make sure it passes. But I just ask you guys to think about it, because I just think there are things that we don't know yet, and I just don't know why they're hiding information from us.
Sure. Make it a party, right?
Gwen, Michael, you all know my address now, 7100 Dunkin. I'm just going to call to your attention this report that you did get from Christopher, that if you're using this to base your information, I would strongly recommend you go to, even just look at Victoria Elementary School on the report that we gave you, which is a school district report. I understand they may use it for different purposes, but in the last referendum, we voted to expand that school, that elementary school. It's on their site, 6 classrooms, 150 students. But Clint Christopher's report that came today said we only expanded it by 35 students. Something's not adding up, and we don't want to spend more money until we understand what's happening with this capacity. So if it's different for some reason, we want to understand why. Because what we voted on is represented on the report they're turning into the state of Minnesota, but it's not what he's telling you today for our capacity. And that's where we have concerns. And you know, I'm gonna echo what he said, because we haven't had this kind of dialogue, and this is great, because we put our minds together and we try to figure out what's best for our communities. So thank you so much, and thank you for sharing this information.
Thank you. So, everyone good now? I want to make sure everyone's given a fair shot, right?
Important to be heard.
Yep. I believe in, you know, as a resident who had issues at one point, I really appreciate that everyone wants a chance to speak, right? So, back to the council. Any final thoughts?
For me, it's just, I got to make this decision, and as a city of Chaska thinking, you know, we are one elected group. There's another elected group that makes decisions on equity in those pieces. You know, I may have personal opinions about those things, but that really isn't why I'm up here, right? I look at how this impacts the city. I see how it impacts the growth. I see how it impacts, you know, my friends, my neighbors, my neighborhoods, you know, being right in the middle of that space, and the good that it brings the city of Chaska. You know, it is not, I've truly always believed it is not my opinion as an elected city council member to tell someone else who's elected on a different board what their job is and what to do. You know, I get the vote to do that, right? Just like all of you. And I think that's, you know, for me, I really just got to, you know, take that piece and say, okay, how does this benefit the city? And how is this supportive of the city and the residents of the greater good? And kind of put some personal concerns and those pieces aside, and, you know, and beliefs. Now, like I said, I think that's kind of for me. And I hear what you're saying with the equity stuff, and but, you know, I do think if you look at the values that are outside that wall right there, you know, we do talk about people welcoming community, and equity goes into that, you know, that piece as well. So, you know, again, appreciate everyone here. Good dialogues, good dialogue. I also know that, anything you do, you're never going to make everyone happy. I've chosen that for my career as well as now an elected position. So I do thank you for everyone coming in and speaking. So that's my comment.
Again, I agree with John in regards to, it's never an easy decision to make, you know. Obviously, you guys have voting power in regards to referendum, and you're going to obviously utilize your voting power. But up here as a council, when we talk about sending an approval, it is about kind of how is this going to impact Chaska and how can we plan for Chaska. I certainly hope that you guys get the answers that you're looking for. I did reach out to the communications director. One of the things I just wanted to note, and I don't want to go into it in longevity, is, you know, I know some of your concern is this referendum have anything to do with the equity work? And I was told no. So I hope that puts some of your mind at ease. I know you look shocked out there, and I can understand that. But as a, you know, as a Rotarian, we say a four-way test. One of the first things we say is it the truth? And everything I do on a day-to-day basis, I recite that four-way test. And is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And I try to weigh that with every decision that I make here and in my daily life. And everyone can have personal thoughts and feelings about this, but I just look at, you know, Chaska and the future and planning and growth on that, and you know, go forward with that.
Yeah, I think I'll hope that Ms. Michael didn't intend to imply we hadn't done our homework on this. When, I mean, this is stuff, I won't speak for all four of us sitting here, but I personally lose sleep over when we have to vote on stuff like this, because it's so important to so many people. And I'll echo Councilor Hubbard in just saying that when I look at this from a perspective of the city of Chaska, I think that it's too important to not just to get caught up in some of the rest of it, and, you know, numbers and whatnot. And I truly do hope as well that that answers are coming for you. I think a lot of the information I see in this packet is in this packet too. So that gives me hope that there are some answers happening, because it seems to be similar information here. But I think, yeah, in the perspective of Chaska, that in line with our mission, it's important that to be able to grow appropriately, this happens.
Would like to make a motion?
So with that, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 29-104, resolution in support of school district referendum.
Second.
Motion by Gross, second by Hubbard. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One abstain. All right, so next order of business. So next order of business is, oh, the most exciting thing on here is bills.
You're not going to stay for the bills?
This long, you must stay for bills, right?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyone have anything? Questions?
Oh, Mike, do you have anything?
I might.
I just got
I'd like to defer.
Let's start, Mike. Go for it.
All right.
My bill's just opened up, so I'm
your
already,
battery.
and they actually have battery.
All right. So page 2, American Society of Composers. This is one I haven't seen before.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, we do a lot of programming of events, and with that, we use a lot of songs that probably are copyrighted. And so I can't remember what it was, maybe about 10 years ago or so, I think it was the League of Minnesota Cities came up with an agreement with the American Society of Composers that we pay one flat fee for royalties, and every city does this.
Just $12.83
Yeah,
though?
we pay it by quarter, and it's not a ton per city, but it's to make sure that there's royalties that go towards each of the artists. So
It's a good thing.
it's a good deal for us, it's a good deal for the artists.
Do you take requests? No.
Yeah.
Okay. Page 5, this is more of a clarification on it. So page 5, under CDW government, it looks like there's a Microsoft Data Center license. Is this just a license for Office 365, or is it something else?
No, you probably know better than
The MS?
Yeah, so it's the MS Data Center license.
That is, we have two different sets of licenses. We have the server license and also the Microsoft Office license.
So that's a what's license?
We have a 3-year license that we renew every year on our servers.
Yep.
And then the MS one, I believe, is the Microsoft Office, and that's one that we have to pay on an annual basis.
Okay. So that's on the servers, basically. That's the hosting of it.
We host the, there's a server license for that, and that authorizes us to then push it out to each of the individual PCs that need access.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Cool. On page, so this one has two different parts. On pages 7 and 8, there's items for sanitation services that looks like they're probably, I know, some sort of sanitation-related items. But then pages 17 and 18 is also on-site sanitation for other various items. Is that and this is more just a question, a general question, is this an opportunity for some consolidation?
So the big presentation I gave there before that we don't have consolidation in building maintenance.
That was it, okay.
Buying power, consolidating, get buying power.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Real life examples here.
Okay, that was a good example. Sanitation's all we're about the.
Well, I mean, the reality is we're gonna get a lot, there's also savings to be had by consolidating things too, so that'll be a positive.
Every bit helps, right?
Yep. Well, garbage is a big expense for us, so.
Yeah, it is. And last one I have is page 22. It's for Target. It was an August rebate for upgrade parking, it looks like, but I'm not sure what that exactly refers to.
22, you said?
Yeah, page 22.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I feel like this is something I would.
And this one's a pretty.
Was it that they paid a deposit in or something? And
It just kind of caught my attention. I don't usually see Target on there or some. Not of this.
My sense with this is this has something to do with construction improvements that they made, and they had some kind of escrow with us, and that's why we'd rebate it, but I'll find out.
If it's that, or if they did some sort of electric improvement to their parking
Oh, to
lights.
the lights in their parking lot.
I'm completely guessing
But
on that.
we'll, we'll figure that out, but I bet you you're right. It's we do rebates for lighting when people upgrade that stuff, but we'll find out for sure.
Because they did some LEDs when they replaced their light stanchions and stuff.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else?
I just had one, it's like very minor, it caught my eye when I was going through it, on page 3 of the, page 2 of the document. To Auburn Manor for this senior citizen, so this has maybe been on things before and I just didn't catch it, it's not a big amount, I just thought it was.
Yeah, this is a contribution that we make each year to, this is for utility bills, is it? For.
It's a contribution to support senior activities in Auburn Manor.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
It's something we've been doing for years and years.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool, okay,
Yeah.
Nice.
thank you, that's the only one I had.
Okay. Others? All right. Babe, last call. So we'd like to do a roll call for bills.
First, we need a motion and a second.
Oh, and a motion in a second.
I'll make a motion to approve the bills.
Second.
Motion by Hubbard, second by Hatfield. Any further discussion on bills? All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
I'm going out of order. Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Grau?
Yes.
Just see,
Councilmember Wong? Get on your toes that way.
just see if you're paying attention.
My heart sunk when I was skipped.
If you make the motion, you gotta answer first.
Okay. Sounds good. We didn't break anything, did we? Okay, so that passes. Bills have been paid. Other business. So, you'd like to start, take it around the horn?
Sure, I've been very busy the past 2 weeks with my sister's wedding, so, but, I know there'll be more coming on this, but just to say, we had our, retreat, and it was amazing, and that was really impactful, so I'm excited for what'll come out for the public to see on that. And I'm very sad that I missed the, Oktoberfest festivities, but from everything I saw, it was amazing, so.
Yes, the retreat was wonderful. I'm curious about the roles and responsibilities section since I had to leave, so I'm hopeful that
Hold on, you got all the roles.
I was hopeful that I didn't get kicked with all the roles and
That's
responsibilities
the
for
rule, you're not
leaving
your present, we
early.
just assign.
I will note on a personal note, I did make it to my photo booth event, got it done, got home, got on a bus or the shuttle or whatever, and then got to the plane in time. So that day went great. Anyways, yeah, outside of that, I don't really have a whole lot to report. So.
Okay, I'll echo, will be a broken record. You know, the thing that I thought was great about the retreat is really just getting the opportunity to interact with the department heads. You know, some I know more than others just based on interest, but it was just good to kind of see them. And, you know, I made the comment about why we've been short so many people and continue to provide great service. Well, you know, they're part of it. Obviously, lots of people, you know, poured up through them, you know, impact all that. So I just thought that was beneficial. I also was a little nervous at the beginning because they all said, well, we just want to get to know the council a little bit. So hopefully they walked away with a positive feeling, at least for you three. We'll see what they thought of me, but no, I'm kidding. So I just want to echo that. Oktoberfest, it was just nice to see kind of how an idea that was spurred to celebrate street reconstruction has kind of blossomed into kind of another kind of good fall celebration community gathering, which I think is cool, and it's good partnerships between lots of different entities. So I thought that was super cool. I gotta ask the question that everyone wants to know: when is Dunkin' Donuts opening? Anyone know?
Nate?
Anyone know?
I thought it opened, no?
I did too, I thought they were open.
Oh.
People keep seeing people there.
I
Okay.
agree that it's a very good question.
Follow-up question is, do we know of any other, and is it been, you know, when, because I get other questions like, what else is going in those buildings?
We do know that.
Yes.
So AT&T is going into that single building on the north. Fitness First is going into
The middle.
one of the middle of that strip building. I forget the name of it's a women's clothing.
The refinery.
Was it the refinery?
The refinery.
That's going into that northernmost one. So they only have one space that's unfilled now, which is that southernmost piece. That's the biggest of that strip mall pieces. So they're actually looking at potentially doing that as two tenants in there.
Good, that's good. That's the popular question I get, other than.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing
Other than the
is-
Dunkin' Donuts question.
I mean, the great thing is that, you know, they committed to just go in there and build that. With the exception of Dunkin' Donuts, it was all in spec, and now they're pretty much filled, so that's great.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Good. Other questions, the other two things I had, well, actually three things. I just thought it was cool, the Cheska Part 30 stuff starting to pick up some state and national recognition and conversation, which is always fun.
They're continuing to get more donations too, which is great.
Which is good.
That meeting you had with GG is good.
What's that?
With Goodwill, Goodman Group. That's great.
Yep. Continue to work.
Continue to work. And then the last two things, I'll leave the best one for last. I would not be doing a service to my neighborhood and kind of some of the ears or voices that speak to me, that just to put a early plug out for when we think of Southwest Chaska Park areas. The huge popularity in a recently built nearby Ninja Warrior Park, being very popular. So
That's not what I thought you were going to say.
throwing that out there early, that the park board would be great if they look at that. I've just heard really good things about that.
You know, on a note with that, so there's gonna be a formal process that starts up for that, and one of the things we're gonna wanna do is get representation for the neighborhood. So that will be something, you know, we're gonna have to plan and, you know, during the winter months here to do that, so it's not gonna be that far off.
I could think of some names.
All right.
And then I volunteer too. And the last thing, tomorrow is October 1st. So on October 18th, just a reminder of the Trail of Fun down in Athletic Park from 5 to 8:30, the hay rides through the trail and the pumpkins in Athletic Park with hot chocolate, usually s'mores. I think it's a personal favorite of mine, and my family loves going to that. I think it's also a great example of partnerships that we build with other cities. So it's really a partnership between Carver County Parks and the city of Chaska and Carver. So just kind of, you know, we got another meeting here, but I wanted to get that October 18th.
There's as many people that go to that as touch a truck.
Yeah.
It's a big event.
I even love it. I don't have kids. I'm like, yes.
I went one year, didn't get on wagon.
You didn't get on?
No.
Get there early. They keep trying to increase capacity with the number of tractors pulling. But yeah, it's a fun event, and hopefully the weather cooperates.
More than $1. I mean, at first it was free, but I think they could charge more money for that. Anyways,
Anything else?
That's all I got.
I'll sour on that.
Yes, there was going to be something I said.
Southwest Forum job thing.
I can't remember now. Maybe it'll come to me.
We come back to you, Matt, if you remember.
All right.
Noel, do you have anything? And Nate, do you have anything?
Sure, I'll offer up a few things, and maybe I'll even catch the thing that Matt was stumbling with, who knows. Southwest Metro Manufacturing Forum is this Friday, really over the lunch hour from 11 to 2 on PB Road north of Lyman. That's an event that's put together by Southwest Metro Chamber, and MKG is one of our manufacturers in town who's really taken a leadership role in trying to pull that event together. But the intent is to really celebrate all the manufacturers that are in our North Business Park in town. So that's a good opportunity to get to know what those businesses do, and I'm told there's going to be some food trucks available for the lunch hour too, so you can grab lunch while you're there.
One of them is that Twisted Oak Pizza. You ever had that before? That's really good.
And so the job fair is from 11 to 1, right?
11 to 2.
11 to 2.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's more than, it's not, I think maybe some of the manufacturers may be using it to advertise for jobs and things, but it's more about just celebrating manufacturing community and the work that gets done.
And they also do a really good job, I think, especially for you guys being up here, of talking about what issues are most prominent to them. And some of them we can't have an impact, but some of them we can. And so I think it's always good for us to hear where ways that they think we as a municipality could improve.
On the topic of industrial neighbors, Formicote will be celebrating their grand opening on October 12th. And that's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So you're encouraged to join for that celebration. Let's see what else did I
be there this time.
Do I get to be a stunt double?
Yeah.
Sorry. Human Rights Commission is throwing, or supporting anyway, an event for the viewing of a 3-part series called Race, the Power of Illusion. So Stacy Nelson Kumar, who's a resident of Chaska, has been working with a small group of other citizens to pull this together and presented the final plans to the Human Rights Commission at their most recent meeting last Thursday. And so the Human Rights Commission is pretty excited about what they've pulled together and providing their support to it. So there's 3 dates, October 10th, October 24th, and November 7th. They're each from 6 to 8 p.m. at the community center, and so each of those dates, one of the 3 in that series will be shown, and it will be facilitated by a gentleman named Jonathan Palmer, who's the executive director of the Hallie Q. Brown Community Center in St. Paul. He's facilitated discussions on this series in the past, so he'll be able to lend his expertise and knowledge of that to the discussion.
One thing I'll point out, that was actually the same video series, one of the 3 we used for the GARE training, that all the, our district district leaders committee that gets together with, it's the mayors and administrators, and then the county and the school district all gets together. We did a, I don't know, 3-hour training on that back in July, and that, one of those 3 videos was what we used as a basis for that training. I thought it was really good.
Clarifying question on that. So it's a 3-video series. You maybe already answered my question indirectly by what you just said. You would find value if you only make one of the 3 or 2 or 3. Obviously, there's a series. Makes sense to see all 3, but I'm just kind of clarifying for my personal reason as well as people who may say, well, can't make all 3 of those work, where we could go. So value if you only can attend one.
Yes, no,
Gotcha.
yeah, I think each of the videos stands on their own, so you can go and, get a good experience just by watching 1 or 2, or, if you can get all of them, that's great too, so, yep. Cool. Rosie Johnson, to agree to be our keynote speaker, at that event, and so she is a longtime, civil rights activist, marched with Dr. Martin Luther King during the civil rights era, and so excited to have her participating in that, and there'll be more details coming as we continue to plan for the event. But I did want to sort of throw that out since that's recent news that came our way for that event, and that's what I have.
Cool. That sounds good. Kevin, you have anything?
Very inclusive.
I did remember mine.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I wanted to thank everybody for coming to retreat. I appreciate that. One of the things that we didn't get to in that retreat that I think that you had mentioned about the department heads getting a chance for everybody to get to know each other. The one thing that they did prepare as part of that was like a 5-minute little talk on their department and some of the things that they most want you guys to know about their department as far as things that are coming in the future, which I think is good for us all to hear. So I do think what I told them I'd do is they take a ton of pride in what they do, and I want them to be able to share that. So we'll get a work session scheduled sometime coming up in the future to give them an opportunity to come and be able to talk about that. Because I think as we plan going into the future, it's good for you to know their perspective on what they're seeing.
Well, that was one of the things I thought was really great. We got chastised by the Oak Ridge server, but me and Matt Clark and I see his face. Marshall had lunch, just the 3 of us.
Yeah.
And while we were breaking the rules, according to Oak Ridge.
Who's the red now?
Yeah.
Well, did you know that was my second highest color? Yeah, it was really, really nice. Actually, leaving, I kind of got lost track, but I wanted just to say to you, I don't know if just emailing out to say, like, I'm more than happy to sit down with any of these people, just even for 20, 30 minutes or whatever, however much,
Yep.
I don't want to take away from their day-to-day, but just.
Well,
that
that's
was really
the
nice.
other thing that and we can talk about that when we get together, is I still think if you're able to, we want to try to get you out into each of the departments, to go on a plow truck to see how they, a plow route. Mike had a chance to go and be with a duty crew for the fire department for a night. I think it's really, I think it's very eye-opening to see that. Even for me, who I've seen it my entire career, it's still eye-opening for me to go out and see some of this stuff, because it's like, holy moly. You just never realize what people do on a day-to-day basis to get the things done that they do. So that's something we still want to make sure that we get you guys the opportunity to get out and see that.
I just want to sit on a snowplow while they plow the roads.
I'd like to see that too.
They won't let me drive, I know that.
Okay, and then anything else here? And then I think, Nate, you covered the manufacturing forum and the Oktoberfest. I went to Oktoberfest, and the Oktoberfest was downtown 2nd Street, and then a kind of continuation up at Schramm. And the one at Schramm was huge. I mean, there's like hundreds of people. I mean, I think I heard something like close to 1,000 people or something like that. So it was big. You know, the parking was
That was their hope.
And that's sort of Aaron Schramm's small version, at least in his mind. I mean,
In his mind, it's a lot bigger in
he's
future
going to
years.
blow that thing up. Is his
So
that's his plan, but we'll see.
So I have to say, it was great to see like a huge crowd out there. Twisted Oak was out there making pizzas, and there was like a few other food trucks out there too. It was just like a great turnout, lots of people. Everyone was like, of course, super happy drinking beer, right? Big surprise. But yeah, it was a great event, and you know, it's great to see that sort of turnout. I was also down on 2nd Street, kind of at the tail end of the day for that, and so that was really great to still see. Even at the tail end, there was still like music and people walking around and lots of stuff going on with the kids stuff. So I mean, it was a really really successful event from what I could see. The only other thing I had was there's an FCC outreach newsletter I forwarded to Matt, you and Kevin. You guys, because I thought there might be some information that might be relevant to some of our citizens in there related to some of the upcoming FCC policy changes and stuff like that. Some just news items. So I figured you might want to distribute some of that.
Well, that call's coming up this week too, so we put out something tomorrow.
Yeah, especially because there's a lot of like the scams and the fraud stuff that's coming up too, related to the police department stuff too. So, certainly want to get that out there, protect our citizens, give them information they need to help protect them from having their livelihood stolen from them. So, anything we can do to help out with that. So, that's pretty much all I have. Anything else? Final call before we adjourn, and then have an EDA meeting following. I know.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Hubbard, second by Graw. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
He's quick.
This time must fly over there. Okay. So, where is that? Lost that. Hang on a second. Okay. Which is it? I lost the agenda. Oh, here it is. So, call to order the Chaska Economic Development Authority for September 30th. Roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Hatfield.
Here.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Here.
Commissioner Graw.
Here.
And President Pro Tem Wong.
Here. All right. So first item is to adopt the agenda. So has everyone had a chance to review the agenda for this evening?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
So motion by Graw, second by Hubbard. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes?
I make a motion to approve the September 16 minutes.
Second.
A motion by Hubbard, second by Hatfield. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So the discussion item for tonight is adopt resolution of EDA 2019-6, establishing a proposed 2020 budget and proposed maximum levy.
Commissioner and board members, so the item in front of you tonight is, just like our in our city council meeting, we need to establish our maximum preliminary tax levy for the upcoming year. One of the things you'll note in the staff report that Noel put together is that the 2020 actual operating levy that's being recommended is a reduction of about $333,000 from last year. The reason being for that is when we do the analysis of the tax impact on a resident, we look at all the levies together. So that's the EDA, the general fund, tax abatement, anything that has to do with tax levy, we look at together. And so the total impact that people have was the $70 increase from last year. Now, where those dollars go, we look at where does it best fit. So one of the things that occurred back in 2014 when we were preparing for the redevelopment that we did over at Fireman's Park is we increased the EDA levy by $300,000 to help support our community fund. That actually, that in addition with dollars from our electric fund and other places, create our community fund that helps support those bigger projects like that. The debt service that we pay for that is actually out of our general fund, and so we felt it made more sense to actually have that levy be in the general fund instead of the EDA and get the EDA expenses back to more what the EDA expenses are. So the total increase that you see, like Noel put in there, is reflective of the 1.35% increase for the market value increase plus 3% for inflation. It reduces our levy here, but it actually increased in the general fund to make up for that loss. So the net is the same. It's just that we're recommending that we shift some of this out of the EDA and into the general fund instead, because that's where our expenditures are actually occurring. So with that being said, we are recommending the 2020 proposed tax levy be at $165,747 with the expenditure budget at $310,000 for 2020.
One correction. The
Yep.
resolution says 314, the number was wrong on the request for action. So the
Oh, it's
resolution says
314.
314
Okay.
for the budget.
All right. Okay.
Okay, so any questions for Matt?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 88, 2019-6.
I would second that motion.
So a motion by Hatfield, second by Graw. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so last thing is other business. Nate?
Nothing?
I'm great.
Did you get answers to that?
Not yet. We're having a work session soon, though, that will hopefully bring some answers to that.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, and
Oh, sorry.
I hadn't finished it.
Yes, go.
Luke, you didn't have anything? Yep. Then,
So tired.
oh, okay. Now we have Michaela.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
So motion by Hatfield, second by Hubbard. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.